Forget New Year, New You. This season is about slowing down, locking the doors, and cozying up at home with the one you really want to do nothing with. Your dog. After the holiday chaos, those quiet nights with a blanket, a podcast, and your pup feel like the reset you actually need. Ollie helps make those moments easier with fresh protein-packed meals made from real human-grade ingredients, so your dog can enjoy some quality comfort food too. Choose from 5 recipes and get a personalized plan for your dog's needs. Meals arrive perfectly proportioned with a scoop and storage container, so serving is fast and mess-free. And with Ollie's in-app on-demand health screenings, supporting your dog is easy, ensuring more cuddles for many years to come. Visit ollie.com/truecrime and use code TRUECRIME for 60% off your first box.
This episode is sponsored by Lifeway Kefir, the cousin of yogurt that is packed with nutrients and probiotics. You may have heard me talk about it once or twice before, and that's because not only is kefir nutritious, but it tastes delicious too. You can find it in the dairy aisle of your local grocery store. And if you go to their website and check out their blog, you'll find tons of tasty Lifeway Kefir recipes, like cinnamon roll smoothies, cranberry creme brulee fruit bars, and kefir crab dip. Yum. Go to lifewaykefir.com/courtjunkie for a special coupon for Court Junkie listeners. That's Lifeway, KEFIR.com/courtjunkie. Hi, this is Jillian, and you are listening to episode 19 of the Court Junkie podcast. Today's episode is about a tragic yet controversial case involving a Cornell University student accused of one of the worst crimes imaginable, the murder of his own father. But before we get started, I want to first thank all of you for listening, subscribing, donating, and leaving me reviews. I have some very exciting news to report. Last month, Court Junkie hit its 1 million downloads milestone, something that I definitely could not have done without your help. So thank you all very much for listening. My sponsor for this episode, Lifeway Kefir, was nice enough to give me some giveaway items, t-shirts and tote bags. So I'll be hosting some giveaways on social media very soon. So make sure you join my Facebook group at courtjunkie.com/Facebook and follow me on Twitter at courtjunkiepod. Now, on to the episode. It was a Thursday morning, February 5th, 2015. Cornell University sophomore Charlie Tan walked into the campus office of his football coach and told him that he needed to talk to him. Immediately, the coach could sense that something wasn't right. Charlie was emotional. It looked like he had been crying. He told the coach that he wouldn't be able to make weightlifting the next day because he had to go home instead. Home being in Pittsford, New York, a suburb of Rochester, and about 120 miles away. The coach told him that would be okay, and told him to please call him when he got there, so that he'd know he made it there safely. He was worried about him. This behavior was very unlike Charlie. Charlie got in his car and drove to his hometown of Pittsford, but he never called his coach to tell him that he made it there okay. In fact, the coach wouldn't hear from him again for quite some time. Later that afternoon, Charlie could be seen on surveillance video at a Walmart in Cortland, New York, trying to purchase a shotgun. He was told his gun application wouldn't be ready for another 6 days, so Charlie left. But a short time later, one of his friends, Whitney Knickerbocker, was seen on surveillance at the same store, purchasing the same gun at about 4 p.m. This time, the purchase went through. At about 6:30 p.m., Charlie went over to his friend Anna's house. She would later say that Charlie was acting normally, that she didn't notice anything different about him. He left her place at about 9:30 to go to another friend's house. But by the time Charlie reached his other friend's house, his demeanor seemed to have changed. His friend Jacob said that Charlie arrived at his place around 10. He said Charlie looked as though he had been crying and that he was acting really sad. They watched basketball for a little bit, and as Charlie was getting ready to leave, he told Jacob that he may be leaving the country the next day. Jacob asked him, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And Charlie got really defensive and told him to shut the hell up, which was really unlike him. Jacob would later say that Charlie's goodbye to him was really sad. Jacob was so worried about him that he and his mom later drove over to the tan house. He said they saw Charlie's car in the driveway, but didn't feel right, so they called 911. They were concerned about his demeanor and how he had been talking about leaving the country. A police officer showed up at the tan home at about 11:35 that night. He spoke with Charlie, who he said seemed calm. He didn't notice any injuries or any blood on him, and he didn't think that there was any cause for concern. But little did he know, if there wasn't a dead body inside the home at that point, there would be soon. Charlie didn't return to school the next day, on Friday. In fact, on Monday, February 9th, he still hadn't returned to school. But at 5:15 in the afternoon on that Monday, his fraternity brothers received an email from Charlie with the subject line, "Showtime." "My brothers, in the coming days you'll start to hear things in the news and possibly get a couple visits from the authorities. Don't listen to anything you hear. A few already know my true story, and in due time, you will also. I love you all so much, and you have given me the family I never had. I can only hope I have left a positive impression on all of your lives as well. Non-CB. How I like to think my actions reflect in the whole scheme of things. Thank you for teaching me this lesson. Special thanks to Shavera for letting me steal the location on my arm. The best days are ahead of all of us, and I promise I will be back in the future. In the meantime, I hope you will visit. As always, fuck the haters. Love, Charlie Tan." And then, less than an hour later,
District for the unknown, 37 Coachside Lane. We had a caller crying on the phone, difficult to understand, possible domestic situation going on there. 621 on there. 622 and 621 additional. Caller said her son or husband arguing. The caller heard shots, said someone in the house has a gun. 610 possible saying her son shot her husband. Caller is hysterical. I'm going to start firing him out that way. Very good, sir. She's saying that the son was trying to protect himself. What kind of gun? Stand by. I'm talking to our supervisor. She says that the caller's not cooperating. She doesn't know what kind of gun. 610, apparently the caller hung up now. Car's going to Coachside Lane, seeing the suspect in the driveway now, trying to get a clothing description. Remember status of the patient as well. 3 people in the house. There's a total of 3 people in the house trying to get a status on the patient.
Can we find out if the male still has a long gun?
He does not have the gun, trying to figure out where the gun is now.
603 dispatch, any update on the suspect whereabouts?
603, still reporting that the caller is with the suspect in the front driveway.
10-4, I have 3 cars on scene, 10-4.
Got 3 cars on scene so far. Alright, 10-4. EMS is coming in now.
a 911 call came into the Monroe County Dispatcher at 6:09 p.m. The caller was Charlie's mom, Jean Tan. She's pretty hysterical, but she's able to give the 911 operator her address, and also says that she heard an argument between her son and her husband, and that she heard gunshots. She tells the operator that her husband was already dead in the upstairs of their house, and that her son shot him with a long gun. She said she didn't know where the gun was, and when the operator tells her to ask her son, she says, "He doesn't want to tell you right now." Monroe County Sheriff's deputies responded to the home. When they arrived, they found 19-year-old Charlie Tan standing in the driveway with his mother, Jean. Their hands were in the air, and, according to the police report, they were speaking to each other in a foreign language. The deputies ordered Charlie to the ground at gunpoint. They handcuffed him and patted him down. Charlie told them that the gun was in the garage, and that his father was upstairs, dead. He said he had to do it because he was going to kill my mother. Inside the home, sitting in a computer chair behind his computer desk, upstairs, was the body of 49-year-old Jim Tan, who had been shot with a shotgun. He had suffered gunshot wounds to the chest, shoulder, and face. The murder weapon was found in the garage, right where Charlie said it would be. Charlie was arrested and charged with second-degree murder in the killing of his father. The big, beautiful house at 37 Coachside Lane in Pittsford, New York, was now tucked away behind yellow crime scene tape. But while the outside of the home had always looked picture perfect, reports started surfacing shortly after Charlie's arrest that everything on the inside may not have been as it appeared on the outside. Charlie was the youngest of two boys and grew up in upstate New York. His parents, Jim and Jean, were both born in China, but lived in Canada for a while before moving to Pittsford. Jim reportedly made good money. He worked for Kodak for a number of years and had recently become the president and CEO of an imaging company called Dynamax Imaging. Charlie excelled in school and had been the student class president in high school. After he graduated, he was accepted to Cornell University, a prestige Ivy League school, and at the time of his arrest, he was in his second year. He played sprint football and was studying economics. By all accounts, he was extremely well-liked and popular. But not many people knew what his home life was like. After Charlie's arrest, neighbors told reporters that police had been called to the house many times before for domestic incidents. And rumors were swirling that Jim may have been the abuser. Charlie was indicted on February 13th. At his arraignment, more than 100 supporters showed up on his behalf. He was released on $50,000 bail. A fund called the Charlie Tan Support Fund was set up, and the site raised more than $45,000 to help with Charlie's defense. In the neighborhood, purple ribbons symbolizing domestic violence were tied to neighbors' mailboxes in another show of support. Charlie's trial began on September 22, 2015, and once again, dozens of supporters showed up. If convicted of second-degree murder, he was facing a minimum of 15 years to life and a maximum of 25 years to life. In his opening statement, prosecutor Bill Gargan said, "Here sits the judge and jury of Jim Tan's life," and he pointed at Charlie, seated at the defense table. Charles Tan took the wisdom of his 19 years and made a decision. Gargan said, "This case is about Charlie's deliberate decision to kill his father." He said Charlie drove home to Pittsford, pointed the shotgun at his father, and then shot him 3 times while he was sitting at his desk, a desk that was undisturbed. He said the shooting was overkill, that Charlie shot Jim 3 times, and that he held the shotgun so close to his father's head that his face was obliterated. He said Jim then sat there for quite some time, possibly for days, before the police were finally called on Monday, February 9th. Gargan said there were no signs of a struggle, suggesting that there was no fight that had led up to the shooting. He said Charlie did it out of hatred for his father, and that there was no immediate threat or danger when Jim was shot. He said, "Charlie's life and potential is not on trial. The actions he took to brutally kill his father are." In the defense's opening statements, Charlie's attorney, Brian DeCarolis, said that Jim's death was a tragedy, but that convicting Charlie would be an even greater one. He said that Charlie is a 19-year-old kid and that he was attending Cornell University with a 3.4 grade point average. He said, "He is not just a good kid, ladies and gentlemen, but a great kid. That information is highly relevant. He pointed out that Charlie had been class president in high school and that he was an exceptional person. He said that the prosecutors claimed that Charlie just decided to kill his father one day just doesn't fit. He told the jury that Jean's 911 call from February 9th would be played in court, but that it won't tell them anything. He said prosecutors don't know when Jim died or how it happened. He said, domestic violence was a big part of the jury selection. It's an important piece of this case. What happened, whenever it happened, is because of that domestic violence piece. It's the why behind what happened. He said Jim was a longtime abuser of both Charlie and his mother. DeCarolis said that the prosecution wouldn't even come close to proving this case beyond a reasonable doubt. He asked the jury to find him not guilty and to end his nightmare. The 911 operator who answered the call from Jean Tan on the night of February 9th, 2015, was the first witness to testify. As the jury listened, Jean's 911 call was played in court.
911 center, what is the address of the emergency?
Yes. Hi. I was
Okay, I can't understand anything you're saying.
In the call, Jean Tan is hysterical. The dispatcher repeatedly tells her to take a breath and tells her that she can't understand her. The dispatcher is able to get that there's a gun, a shooting, and that her husband and son are involved. She asks, "Do you think your son shot your husband?" And Jean says yes. The dispatcher tells her to wait outside for the police with her son. The call is then cut off.
You said your son is next to you? Miss Tan? She hung up.
The dispatcher tried twice to call back, but was unsuccessful. Another dispatcher is then able to get through, and she too tells Jean to go outside with her son. The dispatcher asks her if she's able to check on her husband, and Jean says that she's too scared to, but that he's dead.
He's dead. He's dead. He's dead. He's dead.
You think he's
He's dead. He's dead.
He's dead?
The dispatcher repeatedly asks Jean where her son is. She says he's standing outside with her, and that he's a good kid. Before she hangs up with 911, she says, "He was trying to torture me."
The police are there with you?
Yeah, no, they just trying to torture me.
Who's trying to torture you?
I don't know, somebody.
The next witnesses to testify were the first Monroe County Sheriff's deputies to arrive on the scene that night. Deputy Christopher Cooper said that he was responding to a call of a domestic incident involving a father and a son, and that the son had possibly shot the father. When he arrived, Jean and Charlie were standing in the driveway. He said he and another deputy drew their guns and ordered Charlie to get on the ground with his hands out, and he said that Charlie complied. He said he asked Charlie where his father was, and that Charlie said he was dead inside the house, and that he had to do it because he was going to kill his mother. Cooper said he saw no visible signs of any injuries to Charlie. When he went inside the house, he discovered Jim Tan dead in his upstairs office. He said Charlie told him the shotgun was in the garage. Deputy Derek Smith testified that Charlie had $927 on him when he was arrested, and that while he was taking Charlie to the police station, Charlie asked him if he loved his mother and if he had a family, and that he asked him this randomly. Deputy Michael Mumm took the stand and said that he found 2 shell casings inside the house, upstairs. He said he transported Jean to the police station, and he said he heard Jean tell a paramedic that her husband beats her. Deputy Christopher Reynolds is a crime scene technician who processed the crime scene in this case. Reynolds took photographs of both Charlie and Jean and didn't note any injuries on either one. Reynolds took swabs from the two of them too and tested them for DNA and gunshot residue. He said Jean had a business card in her pocket for a criminal defense law firm. Jurors also saw graphic photos taken by Deputy Steve Williams. In the upstairs bathroom of the home was a shotgun shell casing. Another one was found in a laundry basket in the hallway. Then, photos showed Jim Tan's office, where you could see Jim slumped on the floor behind his desk. There's blood all around him, and his face was unrecognizable. Williams said the blood around the wounds was dried and crusted, not fresh. The desk itself was undisturbed, and on the computer screen, you could see that the last email opened was dated Thursday, February 5th, 2015. Emails that had come in after that had not been opened. Williams also showed the jury photographs of the garage and where the shotgun was found, behind some garbage cans. There was also a photo of a Toyota Corolla in the garage, and in the back seat, there was a box of 12-gauge slugs. 11 rounds of 15 were still in the box. A video tour of the home was also shown to the jury. It was a walkthrough of every room in the Tan house, which looked pretty normal until it got to the upstairs office where Jim's body was. He was slumped over on the floor behind his desk. There's damage to the wall and to a nearby filing cabinet, presumably from the gunshots. According to reports, some of the jurors appeared to get visibly upset while viewing the video. Charlie kept his head down at the defense table. On cross-examination, Williams noted that there was a list found in the home that had attorneys' names written down on them. And in Jean's purse was an appointment card for February 3rd for family court, the domestic violence division. Williams said he didn't take the appointment card into evidence. Deputy Alexandra Baker testified next. She said that she was one of the first 3 responding officers who came to the Tan home that night. She said as a precaution, she had Jean Tan up at gunpoint. She said Jean was cooperative and was very upset. She didn't see any injuries on her, but said that they did do a wellness check on her. Charlie's friend Jacob, the friend whose house he was at on the night of February 5th, the day he arrived back in Pittsford, and 4 days before the 911 call was made, testified that Charlie had called him earlier that afternoon. He said they made plans to hang out later that night, and that Charlie asked him how much money he had. He told him he had about $300 and asked him why. Charlie said they would talk about it later that night when he came over. Jacob said Charlie came over later at about 10 p.m., and he told the jury how it looked as though Charlie had been crying. He recounted how they watched basketball, and how as Charlie was getting ready to leave, he said he may be leaving the country the next day. Jacob told the jury how he was so worried about Charlie that he and his mom later drove over to Charlie's house before deciding to call 911. Jacob said he heard from Charlie again 4 days later on February 9th. He said that Charlie sent out a text message saying he needed an attorney. Deputy William Connell testified next. He was the officer that responded to the Tan home after Jacob and his mom called 911 on February 5th. He said he was aware of domestic disputes at the Tan home prior to arriving. He got there at about 11:35 and spoke to Charlie for about 5 to 10 minutes. He said Charlie was calm and that he reminded him that if he needed anything, to call his friends or call 911. He didn't see any injuries or any blood on Charlie. Deputy Jeffrey Brannigan testified that on the night of February 5th, there were 2 calls between Charlie and his mom, one at 9:50 p.m. that lasted less than 2 minutes, and another at 11:16 p.m. that lasted about 3 minutes. Both calls were made from Charlie's phone to Gene's. Another 911 dispatcher got on the stand and testified that he had received a 911 call from Gene Tan on January 28, 2015, about a week prior to Jim's death.
911 Center, what's the address of the emergency?
Yes, hi, my name is Jing Tan, and I'm at 37 Coastside Lane. And my husband just beats me up. I need your protection.
Are you injured?
Yes, he choked me, and I'm so scared. Please.
Do you want an ambulance?
Come. Oh, you coming? No. Please come. Please come help me.
The call disconnects, and the dispatcher calls back. Gene answers. The dispatcher asks if any drugs or alcohol is involved, and Gene says Jim has been drinking. You can then hear Jim take the phone away from her.
What's he wearing?
Sorry?
What is he wearing?
He's wearing... No.
No, let me talk to him. Yeah. Hello. Okay.
Hello?
Sorry. Yeah. So this is just a mistake. Sorry, please.
No.
What's that?
Calm down, please. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Don't be childish.
No.
Don't be childish.
No.
Hello. Sorry about that. Bother you?
Please.
What's going on?
Hey.
No, I called.
Come on. Sleep there.
No.
Yeah. Hello. Hello. Yeah. Sorry about that. So bother you.
No.
All right. So, come on. Don't be childish.
No.
Oh, what time is it now?
Please help me. No.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello. Yeah. Sorry about that. Bother you here. Right. So this is So I would do it. My wife is probably upset.
Help me.
Gene continues to yell, "Help me," in the background, as Jim is clearly trying to make the situation go away.
She's upset at you?
Please.
No, you're choking me.
No, don't be childish. Sorry. Okay. Hey, don't. Hello.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Hello. Oh yeah. Okay. Come on. What time is it? Right now, don't be childish. All right. So this is. Sorry about that. Okay. So this is. Okay. My name is Jim Tan.
Okay.
All right. So this is no issue here. Just my wife and myself have some arguments. All right.
Wait, what?
No, come. Wait. Okay. All right. Okay. So yeah, any issue here, so we call you.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Then come on. What time is it now? Don't be childish. All right.
Deputy Sean LeClaire testified that he responded to the home the night of January 28th at about 10:40 p.m. He said Jim answered the door and let the police inside the home. He was calm and cooperative. Jean was in the living room, and she was hysterical and crying, and her neck was red. Deputy LeClaire asked her if she wanted to press charges, and she said no. She told him that Jim had choked her and had thrown her onto the floor. She did take information on how to obtain an order of protection, and Jim voluntarily left with the deputies. Jean told him that there had been an earlier order of protection. He said a domestic incident report was completed, but that no arrest was made. An evidence technician testified that 11 fingerprints had been lifted from the shell casings and from the ammo box. 8 of the prints were unusable. Of the 3 prints that were of value, 2 of them matched Charlie, and the third one didn't match anyone they tested. And a forensic firearm examiner testified that the box of ammo that had been found was a match to the murder weapon found at the scene. The head coach of Cornell University's sprint football team also took the stand. He said that Charlie played for the team for 2 years and said he was very positive and a really good guy. He recalled the meeting on the morning of February 5th, when Charlie was distraught, crying, and saying that he would have to miss a weightlifting session the following day. He told the jury how Charlie had told him that he was having family problems and that he had to get home. He said he didn't see Charlie that following week. Charlie's email to his fraternity brothers was also entered into evidence by investigator Alan Petrosky. On cross-examination, Petrosky was asked about an interview he did with one of the Tan's neighbors. That neighbor, he said, told him that she had seen bruising on Jean Tan before. The neighbor also told him that Jim Tan was unfriendly and intimidating. Investigator Scott Peters told the court that he interviewed one of Charlie's classmates at Cornell, Whitney Knickerbocker, the guy who had purchased the gun on that Walmart surveillance video. Peters also explained the part of the email that Charlie had sent to his frat brothers, the part that read, "Non-Sibby, how I like to think my actions reflect in the whole scheme of things." He said that non-Sibby means not for self, and that it's a saying that Charlie had tattooed on his arm. Investigator Stephen Peglow testified that he had tried to interview Jean Tan, but that Jean, through her attorney, had denied his request. He said he also tried to interview Charlie's brother, but he was also denied. On cross-examination, Peglow admitted that Jean had been a suspect in the shooting because they wanted to be thorough. The prosecution then called some employees from Jim's company, Dynamax Imaging, to the stand. One employee testified that she last saw Jim on February 5th. He did not show up for work on Friday, February 6th, or on the following Monday. She said she last received an email from him on the night of February 5th at 8:40 p.m., and that he didn't respond to emails the next day. She said it was unusual for him to not respond. When asked about what Jim was like, she said her experience with him was positive, but that he had temper tantrums, threw things around the office, and demeaned other employees. She said she now reports to Charlie's brother since Jim's death. Another employee testified that Jean and her eldest son, Charlie's brother, now run the company. On cross-examination, he said that Jim often acted like a bully and said that the work atmosphere was stressful. He said Jim would often bring a bunch of employees together, only to demean one of them. He said some employees quit because of him. He said the work environment now is less stressful. The surveillance video from the Walmart in Cortland was shown to the jury from February 5th, 2015. At first, you can see Charlie trying to purchase the shotgun, but then his friend Whitney ends up buying it. The jury heard that he had spent between $350 and $400 on the shotgun and ammunition, and that he paid in cash. The chief medical examiner in Monroe County, Dr. Caroline Dignan, was called to the stand. She completed an autopsy on Jim Tan on February 11th, 2015. She said that Jim was 5'4" and 150 pounds, and that the shot to his face was very destructive. He also had gunshot wounds to the chest and arm. She said that due to the decomposition of the body, it was tough to tell some details about the entrance and exit wounds. The trajectory of the gunshot to the chest was from right to left and downward. She testified that Jim had been dead for some period of time, at least 24 to 48 hours before being reported, but that it could have been even 4 to 5 days. And then she said, it appeared as though a dog or a cat may have licked or bit at his wounds while he was decomposing. Prosecutors requested to take the jury on a tour of the Tan home, and although the defense objected to it, Judge Pompiano sided with the prosecution, saying that he believed the visit would help the jury. So on the last day of the prosecution's case, the jury took a trip to the Tan home. 4 jurors at a time were permitted to go directly upstairs to Jim's office and back. The media was ordered to stay at least 300 feet away while the jurors viewed the home. The prosecution rested their case after calling about 30 witnesses to the stand. We'll see what the defense's case is right after this quick break. Want a quick and easy way to enter to win a $100 Amazon gift card and help out this podcast at the same time? Go to courtjunkie.com/survey to take a quick, anonymous survey. Court Junkie is in need of some new advertisers, and to do that, they need to know a little bit more about my audience. The survey is quick, easy, and anonymous. And even if you've taken a podcast listener survey before, this one is specific to Court Junkie, so please take this one too. Once you're done, you can enter to win that $100 Amazon gift card. Just go to courtjunkie.com/survey. Now, back to the show. When the defense got up to present their case, they did what most defense teams do in a good majority of trials. They moved to dismiss the case, saying that the people failed to meet their burden of proof. The prosecution, of course, argued against it, and Judge Pompiano said that he would reserve his decision, and he ordered the defense to move on with their case. The defense's case consisted mostly of character witnesses. One of Jean Tan's friends testified that she gave Jean advice about obtaining a divorce attorney in late January. A friend of Charlie's, who worked with him where he volunteered at the YMCA while in high school, testified. She said that Charlie was the only high school student to be on the board and that he had won Youth Volunteer of the Year. She said he was loved by all. Charlie's old high school football coach also testified. He said that Charlie was one of the most highly regarded young men he knows. He said, "I don't know if he ever did anything for himself. He's the perfect servant leader." Charlie's friend Anna took the stand and told the jury how she saw Charlie at about 6:30 p.m. on February 5th. She said he was acting normally, and she didn't notice anything odd about his behavior that night. She said Charlie left around 9:30 to go to his friend Jacob's house. She said he never asked her for money, and he never mentioned leaving the country to her. She said it wasn't normal for Charlie to visit her when school wasn't out on break, but that he never told her why he was home. She described Charlie as selfless and said that he was always there for others. On cross-examination, Anna said she helped raise money for Charlie's defense, and that within 3 days, they had raised about $50,000. The defense's next witness was Robert Visca, who worked for the Monroe County Crime Lab as a forensic biologist. He took 3 samples from the shotgun and tested them for DNA: the trigger, the barrel, and from inside the barrel. He said there was no DNA inside the barrel. There was a complex mixture from at least 2 different DNA profiles from the barrel and muzzle of the gun, and that there was a complex DNA mixture of at least 3 people on the trigger of the gun. Charlie declined to testify. After less than an hour of presenting their case, the defense rested. Before I get into the closing arguments, I want to stop here real quick to go over the timeline so far, because it can be kind of confusing. So Thursday, February 5th is the day that Charlie talked to his coach, left Cornell University, and came home to Pittsford. At 4 p.m. that day, a shotgun was purchased. At 6:30, Charlie met up with his friend Anna, and he left her place at about 9:30. At 9:50, he talks to his mom for about 2 minutes. At 10 o'clock, he shows up at his friend Jacob's house. They watch basketball, and then Charlie leaves. At 11:16, Charlie and his mom talk again on the phone, this time for less than 3 minutes. At 11:35, a police officer shows up at the Tan home and speaks with Charlie. Then, 4 days later, on February 9th, Charlie sends that email to his fraternity brothers, and Jean calls 911, saying that her son shot her husband. In their closing arguments, defense attorney James Noble said that the prosecution failed to put the gun in Charlie's hands, saying that they only proved where the gun came from, not who had actually fired it. Noble said, "Pretty close only works in horseshoes and hand grenades, not in murder trials." He then, perhaps shockingly, shifted the blame onto Jean Tan, Charlie's mother and Jim's wife. He suggested that Charlie could be covering for his mother and said that after the prosecution's case, there were more questions than answers. Nobles once again played the 911 call from Jean from January 28th, where she had said Jim was abusing her. He said that Jean had researched lawyers and had lied when she called 911 the night of February 9th. He also pointed out that she had refused to be interviewed by police. She was a liar, he said, and that she had the opportunity, ability, and motive to shoot and kill her husband. He said her motive was stronger than Charlie's. Nobles said that there are too many gaps in the case and that the burden of proof is on the prosecution to prove that Charlie had been the one to pull the trigger. While Nobles was talking, Charlie appeared to be crying. Nobles continued talking about Jean's possible motive for wanting to kill her husband. He said Jim was wealthy and that in 2014, he had profited $2.1 million from his company, Dynamax Imaging. I hate to be this crass, he told the jury, but she got the house, she got the business, she's got motive, at least 2.1 million of them. He brought up Charlie's statement to investigators that he had to do it because he was going to kill his mother. He argued that it could have been anything. It could mean taking the blame or buying the gun. He called the prosecution's case smoke and mirrors and said that there will be several questions they'll need to sort out in order to reach their verdict. He showed the jury the photo of Jim's face after the shooting, saying that the crime took anger and hate, something he said Charlie didn't have. In their closing arguments, Prosecutor Gargan said that Charlie always went above and beyond. At school, at the YMCA where he had volunteered. He said, "I am Charlie Tan, and I do everything greater than others." He said that Charlie solved the problem of his mother's abuse in the way an overachiever would. He obliterated it. He reiterated that Charlie Tan was the one who fired the gun, saying, "Charlie Tan solved this problem." He said Charlie had his friend buy the gun at the Cortland Walmart, traveled 120 miles to his home, walked up the stairs and through the hallway to his father's office, and then shot his father at least 3 times at close range. Gargan got pretty animated during his closing. He recounted the email that Charlie had sent to his fraternity brothers, and, using his hands as a megaphone, shouted, "Showtime!" the subject of that email. He said, "Showtime and fuck the haters. Who says that about their own father?" He said Charlie essentially confessed when he told the officer, "I had to do it." He called Nobles, the defense attorney, Bill Clinton, the way he was arguing over the definition of the word it. He grabbed the shotgun and brought it over to the jurors, holding it up and saying, "I can't face you anymore. Die, die, die." He said the proof was overwhelming against Charlie, so the defense is blaming a woman, a strategy used from the beginning of time. Then, with the shotgun in his hand, he walked quickly over to the defense table and raised his voice again, saying, "This is what your lawyer said about your mother, that she is a liar." Judge Pompiano stepped in at this point and ordered that the jury be removed from the courtroom. He scolded Gargan and said that he was not allowed to run across the courtroom carrying a gun, yelling at Charlie Tan, and being disrespectful of the defense. He told Gargan to calm down and said, "You are very close to prosecutorial misconduct." When the jury came back in, Gargan played the 911 call again, where you can hear Jean saying, "He's a good kid. He was trying to protect me." Gargan concluded his argument by saying that Charlie represents the American dream, that his parents came from China and they were immigrants who had achieved great wealth with their company. But he said that Charlie's American dream became the American tragedy when he bought a gun to solve the problem. He said, "You know, if your son was on trial, you would have to convict. Strip away the sympathy. This is not a popularity contest." The trial was then handed over to the jury, a jury comprised of 10 women and 2 men. They deliberated for about 90 minutes on the first day and asked for a clarification on the definition of the second-degree murder charge, specifically what constitutes intentional murder. About 4 hours into their deliberations, the jury requested to see the photos entered into evidence and to hear both 911 calls again. The judge agreed to let them hear the calls again, but told them that it had to be in open court in a controlled setting. The jury then requested to see the gun, the shell casings, and the ammunition box, which they were allowed to do one at a time and without speaking to each other. They also asked that the fingerprint testimony be read to them again, so they received a printout of the testimony, saying that Charlie's right middle fingerprint had been on a shotgun shell and that his right thumbprint was found on the ammo box. More time passed as the jury continued deliberating, but they then had another request, to hear parts of the 911 call from February 9th, yet again, which they did. On the third day of deliberations, the jury requested to look at the testimony from the deputies who first encountered Jean and Charlie at the scene. They said they want to hear what their words exactly were. They also requested to see the email Charlie had sent to his frat brothers. Later, the jury requested more evidence. This time, they wanted to read back testimony from Deputy Brannigan about the phone calls between Jean and Charlie on the night of February 5th. As a reminder, there were 2 calls, one at 9:50 p.m. that lasted about 2 minutes, and another at 11:16 p.m. that lasted about 3 minutes. Remember that Charlie had gone to a friend's house from 6:30 to 9:30, and she said he was acting normally. But by 10, his other friend said that he was despondent. Outside the courtroom, Charlie's attorney told reporters that he believed the jury reviewing these calls was good for Charlie. He said that 9:50 p.m. call may have been Jean telling Charlie that she killed her husband. On day 4, the jury again requested to hear the 911 calls and to reread the testimony from Charlie's friend Jacob, who had been so concerned about him on the night of February 5th that he had called 911. On day 5, they sent their 14th note to the judge. This time, they requested testimony from the friend Anna, who had said Charlie was acting normally when he came over to her house on February 5th. On day 6, they sent their 15th note. This time, they wanted to hear the testimony again from the deputy who found the attorney's card in Jean Tan's pocket, as well as the testimony about who the suspects were in the case and who was ruled out. As a refresher, the investigator said that Jean was a suspect, but that she and her eldest son had lawyered up and refused interviews. Then, after 6 days of deliberations, including 17 notes having been sent to the judge, the jury sent an 18th note, this one saying that they were deadlocked. The judge read them the Allen charge, which essentially urges the jury to continue deliberating. He asked them to keep an open mind and to apply good judgment. He said, "Frankly, this wasn't intended to be easy." The jury went back to deliberate, but soon they were sending their 19th note. This one asking for a complete list of all the prosecution witnesses. On the 7th day of deliberations, the jury requested to review testimony again from 4 different witnesses, and then, a little later in the day, they requested the testimony from 5 other witnesses, plus a written copy of the law. The judge said he would allow them to review the testimony, but that they could not have a written copy of the law. He would instead read it to them. After deliberating for 12 hours on the 7th day, the jury sent a note to ask the judge to dismiss them for the night, saying that they were exhausted and were being unproductive. They resumed deliberating the next day. On October 8th, 2015, after approximately 53 hours of deliberating, Judge Pompiano summoned the jury. In a shocking move to all of the spectators in the courtroom, he dismissed them from their service without them having reached a verdict. even though they hadn't finished deliberating. He said that he had reviewed the law and that the jury can be discharged under certain circumstances, and if all parties agree. Judge Pompiano then declared a mistrial. After the mistrial was declared, many jurors spoke to the media and expressed their dismay at the judge's decision to dismiss them. Some told reporters that they wanted more time to deliberate, and others said they thought that they were close to reaching a unanimous verdict. All of them said that they were still working very hard when the judge called them in. One even said, "It was very possible we would have gotten there. I think we would have done it this afternoon." Some jurors confirmed that they had opened their deliberations 9-3 in favor of acquitting Charlie, but were 8-4 in favor of acquittal when they were summoned. Charlie's attorney, Dee Carolis, said that their side was disappointed. He said they had been hoping that Charlie would be acquitted and that he could go back to Cornell and move on with his life. The prosecution said they were definitely planning on trying Charlie again, something Dee Carolis said that they had been expecting. He said, "We recognize that the DA's office isn't going to walk away from a homicide." He said that they had already started talking about round 2. In an interview later that day, Judge Pompiano said that he had no regrets about dismissing the jury and declaring a mistrial. He said that the attorneys for both the prosecution and the defense had approached him with concerns that the deliberations were going on longer than the arguments in the trial had, with no signs of a verdict. He said, "The jurors may have remarked that they might have reached a verdict. I think in good faith, they probably do think that, and we'll never know if that was the case. But would that verdict have been 2 days down the road, a week, a month, or whenever?" He said that both sides had discussed it amongst themselves and felt that they could consent to a mistrial. The next hearing in the case was scheduled for November 5th, where Judge Pompiano would rule on the routine motion from the defense to dismiss the charges, and also to schedule a retrial, if needed. And also at that hearing, Judge Pompiano would make another shocking decision in the case, one that would completely turn the case on its head. The hearing started with the judge asking Prosecutor Gargan if they were planning on retrying Charlie Tan, to which Gargan responded, "Yes, Judge, we will be intending to try the case again." Judge Pompiano told them that they would get back to that in just a moment, but that he wanted to discuss the defense's motion to dismiss. He said, "The interesting thing about a trial order of dismissal, which requires the court to view the evidence in the light most favorable to the people, is that there has to be evidence to view. In this case, there was no evidence presented that the defendant was ever in possession of the alleged murder weapon, or had anything to do with procuring it. There was no evidence presented that the defendant ever fired it. There was no evidence presented that the defendant ever touched it. In fact, DNA analysis suggested multiple contributors to the trigger and barrel of the gun, unexplained by the prosecution at the time of the trial. There was no evidence the defendant had anything to do with the weapon being located in his mother's garage at the time it was found, or otherwise. There was no evidence, circumstantial or otherwise, placing the defendant at the murder scene at the time of the murder. He continued, "The fingerprint on the box and shell casing is a proven fact, if accepted, but then to draw an inference in the light most favorable to the people that the defendant loaded that into the gun and then fired the weapon at the decedent is pure speculation, unsupported by any other evidence in this case." Judge Pompiano said that there were no fingerprints, no DNA evidence, and no forensic evidence tying Charlie to the crime or to actually committing the murder, not on the weapon, nor at the murder scene itself. He said that prosecutors argued that Charlie was the sole perpetrator and that he had motive. However, other people had similar motives, including Charlie's mother, Jim's coworkers, and the person who had actually purchased the murder weapon. He said that because of those reasons, among others, it was no wonder why the jury struggled for almost 8 days to try and reach a verdict. Prosecutor Gargan, visibly upset at this point, interrupted and said, "Judge, may I briefly speak?" The judge responded, "No, you may not. If you speak, I'm going to place you in handcuffs and put you in jail." Gargan said, "Okay, let's do that. Let's do that then." A court deputy walked over and stood behind Gargan, waiting to see if the judge would give the order to place him in handcuffs. Judge Pompiano said, "You will be respectful to the court, Mr. Gargan." The two continued to go back and forth, Gargan saying, "I am being respectful. I have asked to speak." And Judge Pompiano saying, "You will remain quiet or I will remove you from this courthouse." Judge Pompiano then continued, saying, "This motion is being granted because the evidence was not legally sufficient to establish the charge brought. In light of that, this court is ruling that the motion is granted, that the murder charge against Mr. Tan is dismissed, that the bail may be exonerated, and that he may be released forthwith." He then told Gargan he could now speak. Gargan said, "I don't know if the court has suffered some form of amnesia regarding the proof that was presented to the court. The court is well familiar with the fact that the evidence that was presented to the court included, aside from the admission from the defendant that I had to do it, he was going to kill my mother, you also had the excited utterance of Jean Tan in the 911 call in which she specifically says that he did it." Gargan continued going over the evidence they had presented, how Charlie's friend purchased the gun, and that the same weapon was found in the house, how he had told his friend that he was going to need to leave the country. He said, "So in viewing the evidence in the light most favorable to the people, it is self-evident that the motion must be denied. I'm curious as to whether or not the court has considered that evidence in its evaluation because it was specifically left out in its report." Judge Pompiano responded that the court had considered all the evidence and that the gun was found in the garage, not the house, to which Gargan said, "It's an attached garage, Judge. It's an attached garage." When Gargan was finished arguing his point, Judge Pompiano said, "Mr. Gargan, you can take a deep breath, take a step back, and reflect on the remark to this court about the court having amnesia, which this court found to be offensive, rude, indignant, and totally out of line with an officer of the court. And if you want to make a statement relative to that remark, I will receive it. You can have your moment." Gargan said, "Judge, I don't need any more moments." Judge Pompiano then ended the hearing, saying, "The matter is concluded." And with that, Charlie Tan walked out of the courtroom, a free man. Charlie, with a huge smile on his face, hugged his attorneys and then left with the group of supporters who had showed up to court that day, no doubt having no idea that they would be leaving with Charlie in tow. Outside the courtroom, Charlie's attorneys told reporters that they couldn't be happier for their client and said that the judge made the right call, given the lack of forensic evidence. The prosecutor, however, clearly didn't agree. Gargan called the decision the most shocking and absurd judicial move he's seen in his career as a prosecutor. He told reporters, "I stand by every decision I made here, and I was more than willing to have handcuffs placed on me to be able to argue my point, because I didn't cross any lines." He said, "When you have someone saying, 'I did it, I had to do it, he was going to kill my mother,' and you find the deceased, and you find the murder weapon, and the judge takes great pains to point out that the murder weapon was found not in the house, but in the garage. That's the sort of nuance that is of little meaning." District Attorney Sandra Doorley was also angry, saying that this was an example of prejudice within the criminal justice system. She said, "This would have never happened to a city kid." She told reporters that her office is researching whether the decision could be appealed. In January 2016, Judge Pompiano was elected to the state Supreme Court, and it was determined that he would no longer be handling criminal cases. Instead, he would now be handling matrimonial cases in the civil branch of the state Supreme Court. Meanwhile, Sandra Doorley filed a notice of appeal, asking the Appellate Division, 4th Department of State Supreme Court to reverse Judge Pompiano's decision. Not only is this a rare move for a prosecutor to make, but typically the Appellate Division's decisions go back to the trial judge. But since the trial judge is no longer handling criminal cases, it wasn't clear what could happen. The appeal was assigned to a panel of 5 judges. Those judges would review the briefs, study the law, and then hear oral arguments. The first hurdle the DA would have to get through was the issue of whether or not the judge's decision was even appealable. If it's determined that it is, then they would need to show that the judge erred in dismissing the case. Charlie's attorneys were claiming that the judge's decision was essentially an acquittal, and if the DA brought a new trial against Charlie, that would fall under the double jeopardy laws, meaning that a person cannot be charged for a crime after they've been acquitted of the same offense. But the DA argued before the judges, saying that because Charlie and his attorneys had acknowledged that he could be tried again on the day of the mistrial ruling, that was a waiver of double jeopardy protections. On March 31st, 2016, the judges made their ruling. Judge Pompiano's decision could not be reversed, and Charlie could not be retried. They did add, however, that although the decision couldn't be reversed, Judge Pompiano was wrong when he said that there was insufficient evidence to support the murder charge. They wrote, "Were we able to review the merits, however, we would agree with the people that the court erred in dismissing the indictment." Their ruling was unanimous. And that's where the case stands today. The DA could ask the Court of Appeals to review the decision, but given that the ruling was unanimous, it would be quite a long shot. Judge Pompiano has since been disciplined by the Commission of Judicial Conduct, not for throwing out the charges, but for his comments during interviews to the media. In those interviews, he called Charlie Tan a sympathetic figure, a comment that the commission said was out of bounds for a judge. Charlie has since withdrawn from Cornell University. Although he had planned on returning after the trial, a disciplinary hearing had been scheduled to determine whether he had violated Cornell's Code of Conduct. His attorney told reporters that he would now attend a school where his case was not so familiar. And that does it for today's episode. But as always, I'm interested to know what you all think about this case. Is Charlie Tan a sympathetic figure? Do you think you would have been able to convict based on the evidence against him? Was the judge wrong in throwing out the case? Or did the justice system work in this situation? Join our discussion about this case by joining our Facebook discussion group at courtjunkie.com/Facebook. You can also find me on Twitter at CourtJunkiePod, and I'm also now on Instagram at CourtJunkie. A special thank you to my Patreon supporters. This week, I want to give a special shout out to Robin, Maria, Lucky Jean, Paige, and Wendy. Thank you so much for your support. If you'd like to donate as little as $1 a month to this podcast, go to courtjunkie.com/support. You'll get access to early, ad-free episodes, too. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Until next time.